Hi, everybody, and welcome to our show on two important events that are happening in March. Uh, One is the International Women's Day, and the other one is the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So, keeping these two in mind is going to be the theme of our panel today. And I have some eminent panelists who are going to give a quick introduction of who they are. Actually, none of them need an introduction, but I'm going to ask them to just, introduce themselves. So, Janice, would you mind sharing a brief bio?
Yeah, thanks, Mary, for having me here virtually on Treaty 6 territory. My name is Janice Irwin. I am the NDP MLA for Edmonton, Highlands, Norwood, and my critic roles are I'm the critic for status of women and for LGBTQ2S+ issues.
Yeah, perfect. Karen, you're next.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It's nice to be in this space with all of you ladies. My name is Karen Tang. I'm a public health professional. I am a municipal election candidate for the Southeast Ward Garehio, which is an ode to the Michelle Band of Alberta. And I'm feeling really, really fired up. Organizing a march for tomorrow that I would love to share more about. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, exciting things you're doing, Karen. Thank you so much for the amazing work you're doing.
Thank you.
And we have Siba Kamalo. Am I right? Is it Siba?
Yeah, my name is Siba Kumalo. Yes, from the Zimbabwean community. I'm the current chairperson there. I also am a board member of the Africa Center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have some amazing panelists here. Thank you so much for joining us, Siba. I'm quickly going to jump into the questions because we have a brief half an hour to get this through, and we have a lot of heavy questions here. And the main topic for today is glass ceilings. And as women, career-oriented women, women with a lot of passion and ambition, all of us have experienced the glass ceiling. So I want each of you to share your experience with the glass ceiling and how did you break it and what did you do and how hard was it compared to maybe a male counterpart? Janice, would you like to take that?
Ooh, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's always I get asked this sort of question a lot, and so it's always tricky because the first thing I need to put my glasses on so I can see you all. But the first thing I always do is I need to acknowledge my privilege, right? So yes, I've absolutely encountered barriers in my political journey, as an example. But it's important to acknowledge that I am a white cisgender woman with privilege, right? And so anything I've experienced is not nearly as awful as racialized folks have experienced, as an example. And so yeah, I mean, I think I've probably faced more pushback being an openly queer person more than being a woman. But I know, Mary, there's just so much work to be done to really shatter the glass ceiling for more women. And that means racialized women, Indigenous women, trans women, the list goes on, right? So there's definitely a lot more work to be done.
Yeah, I totally agree. And me belonging to one of the minority communities here in Edmonton, personally, I have also experienced some of those, despite the fact that I've held very senior positions in other parts of Alberta. I moved to Edmonton and I'm not able to get the same kind of positions here for some, strange reason. So so I have been here for 5 years and the executive director position that I held in Fort McMurray is still elusive to me. I have therefore gone down a cadre, gone into the coordinator kind of roles because nobody's giving me the managerial role. So might as well just do something that, fits my personality and the interests I have. So this is just my personal experience, but I know Karen has lots more to share. So I'm going to go to Karen. Karen, I'm sure that you have had some experience of the glass ceiling, being a person of a racialized minority, as well as, somebody who's pretty ambitious and done some exciting things in her life. Please go ahead.
Oh man, you caught me in a very, I would say, emotional week with all that's been happening and been thinking a lot about this, I wish I could say I know what it takes to break the glass ceiling, and I honestly don't. Professionally, I think also just starting in the government, all you can do is kind of move laterally, and it's actually really hard to advance. And I've been, told that, you're not necessarily managerial or leadership material. And sometimes that makes you think, oh, I got to work harder. And being Asian Canadian, I fit that myth of model minority that you don't complain, you work hard. And I think what happened, recently with all the racism that's happening, I think about the impact on Asian American, Asian Canadians. And as someone who's entering the public life for the second time, I think there's something that's dawning. There's something that's clicking for me. And I think folks with darker skin color, I think you are gonna, you know what it's like when people see you and they don't know you and they judge you for the race that you have. And I think there's a lot of conversation right now around the view of Asian women in society, that we are small, we're weak, we're subservient, we're pushovers. And that made me suddenly realize that if I show up at the door and present myself as a leader, how do you think people, what do you think they're thinking when they see me? That you're not necessarily credible, that you're not gonna stand up, that you're just not the leader that we need in our society. And so trying to fight against that, I think, is incredibly hard. And I think for a long time, I'm just like, gotta just be dogmatic about it and just work hard. Sorry. And I think I think is a very, it's not even professional glass ceiling, it's societal, it's everywhere. And totally. That's the kind of challenge that I think that's extremely, extremely hard as someone who is ambitious, who does want to enter this arena of politics. And we wonder why we don't see more racialized people in these kinds of political leadership. It's not because they're not coming forward. There's inherently so much danger in putting yourself out there when your very appearance puts you as a target. But there's also so much perception that it takes. It's a huge mountain to climb, to overcome those perceptions and get people to actually know you for who you are. So that's where I am in this moment right now, and I think about this all the time. So
yeah, I just have to acknowledge what you said, Karen, and it's so difficult for you to have come out and spoken very openly about what you're facing right now. It's so hard as a person who is from some other culture to really understand what the Asian women are going through right now. It's really tough after a few assaults that have happened recently and stuff. It's just so hard to be that leader, that you're putting yourself out in the community. I totally can see where you're coming from, but I really don't understand exactly how it feels. I am grateful for that perspective, totally. And we are so grateful for the work you do, Karen, because I've seen you for the last 4 or 5 years. I really know that, you really get in there and you are so passionate. So I don't see why people can't look at you as a leader, because you have already done so much in the community. Moving on to Siba, she's another woman leader. She's president of the Zimbabwean Association. And I'm going to ask her, how did she achieve the things she did? And was it as easy as maybe a male counterpart?
Okay, so for me, with my position in my community as the chairperson of the Zimbabwean community, in that regards, it wasn't quite a struggle like the struggle that I'm facing at work, because with the community, it was basically my community. So I actually had lots of support, from everybody. But the challenge that I continue to face as an African, I consider myself an African. At work, especially, at first I went to nursing, thinking, oh, nursing, with nursing, there was, so much demand for nurses. So unlike other job opportunities in the government, in the corporate world, nurses were more in demand. So for me, there and then when I first came here, I knew that I had to go to nursing. for me to support myself, to support my family, because nursing was in demand. But still, in the nursing, like where I'm working right now, as a lower supervisor, I noticed that sometimes even families, staff, they look down on you. Sometimes they come, on the unit, and they pass you sometimes, and then they will maybe go to my other white counterpart, who's like, for example, a healthcare aide, and they think that they are the ones who are in charge, right? They'll just pass you like you are, they don't look at you
Wow.
as, someone who can be whatnot. They actually pass you to go to someone who's white, who's a healthcare aide. They're like, "Oh, are you in charge? Who's the nurse in charge?" And then they are redirected back to me. So
Wow.
those are kind of the things that we every day, where sometimes positions they pass you the management, they'll pass you, leaning towards a whiter counterpart, But what I've tried to do is to try to educate myself, because with us, people of color, sometimes if you don't know your rights, sometimes you let people walk all over you, or do some things that you're supposed to do. So what I've done is try to, as much as possible, educate myself, educate the others, and advocate for myself and stand up for what's not right. I usually speak out if I see something which is not going right. I'm a person who speaks out. So yeah,
Thank
that's
you,
why I do. I
Siba. I mean,
educate
that's
myself as well.
awesome. I mean, it requires a lot of
Yeah.
courage to be you in the position that you are. And it's amazing that you are able to, bring that confidence to your role and to not be deterred by what people are doing around you. So thank you so much for that perspective. It's really important for Black women in whatever position to remember that, you are you. Nobody can change that. And whatever people do, that's about them. That's not about you. So that's a really important perspective. Thanks for that. The other question that I want to put out there is,
Absolutely.
do you think, I mean, in your current position, Janice, you have been responsible for a lot of, you've done so much work in the area of LGBTQ and a lot of, I think we've lost Siba. I hope she rejoins. So I just want to, share some of your experiences where you actually thought, oh my, this wouldn't have happened if it was not me, if it was somebody else.
Yeah. Oh goodness, I'll have to think about that. But I just want to first acknowledge what Karen said, and just obviously share my total support and love with her and with the community. And it's, oh my goodness, it's been a wild past few months. We've had 6 attacks on Black Muslim women here in Edmonton. We've had a horrific attack on Muslim women in Calgary. And of course, we've had anti-Asian racism and anti-Black and Indigenous racism just really increasing a lot lately. And it's just so alarming. And that's where I need to, use my privilege as a politician to speak out, and also as a white person, right? I mean, I've said this all along, we need to be calling it out, all of us, right? Absolutely. And so I say all that, Mary, to answer your question, to say that, I think there are examples where I get pushback for speaking out. Just before we came on air, you mentioned my office being vandalized, and I can't explain obviously the motivations of that person and why they chose to do that, but I don't think it's a coincidence that I'd been speaking out against white supremacy and racism, and been very unequivocal about it. And I'd been getting a lot of really awful messages from a few people who were trying to silence me. So I think this was taking it a step further, right? But you know what? It's not about me. I'm fine. But what I experience is just a fraction of what racialized people are experiencing all the time: violence, harassment, intimidation. And so, Mary, it's just on all of us to speak out when we can, if it's safe. And that means that means white people, right? We need to be stepping up. That means, men need to be stepping up when we're seeing an increase in gender-based violence. I don't think it's a coincidence that all the Muslim women, well, it was mostly Muslim women who were attacked. There was a man attacked as well, but I don't think it's a coincidence that it's very much gender-based, right? So there's a lot of work to do, and I'm just really want to support the work of Karen and others, and yourself, Mary, and people who are doing that grassroots organizing and that advocacy.
Thank you, Janice. It's really tragic what has been happening over the last few months, and I remember reading about this older Asian woman who actually took a stick and she hit the man. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. Like, somebody who the man thought was vulnerable actually gave back. So that's the least, somebody could have done in retaliation. But it's really sad to see like how people attack those they think are vulnerable. They are just like Karen said, they think that we are subdued, we are like that. And that's the perspective. That's the kind of perception that people have about Asian women. It's very sad. The question I have now is moving into the same area that we've been speaking about, discrimination. In your work with racialized minorities and with Aboriginal people, Janice and Karen, have you had any opportunity to intervene, and how did it turn out?
Karen, do you want to go first?
Oh man, I think that's a good question. I want to say yes. I can't think of anything that kind of comes to mind specifically, but I guess sort of indirectly to answer that question, I think it's really complex, because not only do we have sort of the outright violent discrimination that we're seeing right now in the news. Oftentimes, we also have very much lateral violence within communities, like cultural communities, and the discrimination to other cultural communities. And I will just say that, sometimes it's about not only speaking out in a very public way, but also kind of doing that work within our own communities to say, what does it take to work across cultures to build those bridges? And that's the work, I think, in the last couple of years that I really want to. I think I've just realized how important that is, and that's where I've been directing a lot of my energy. And we are organizing an anti-hate, anti-racism. It's called a Bridges Against Hate March tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And we're a small organizing group. This all came together. We had our first meeting on Monday. We are a dozen or so people coming from all kinds of backgrounds, from Asian, but also Black, Muslim, Indigenous, and LGBTQ. Mary, you and I have been part of this conversation for a very long time. And I've never actually worked in this way, because too often we're pitted against each other, right? And rather than speaking up for each other, we actually speak against each other. And so how do I show up? Like, for the first time, I'm like, we're showing up for each other, and we're here for the single purpose. And so I guess indirectly, to answer your question, I think that's the work we need to do.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a very I've been having such a roller coaster week.
I understand totally, Karen. And, organizing these things is not easy either, because there'll be lots of people throwing all kinds of things at you. So I know that you must be really feeling very emotional right now. To Janice, being a leader and our MLA, I just wanted to kind of ask, what are the kinds of things that we should put in place to see that, we can break down these structures of systemic racism?
Oh goodness, yeah, that's an easy one, right? Just simple answer. No, and yeah, I mean, one of the first things is, again, I just want to acknowledge what Karen's words and amplify those, because I will not. I can't be encouraging people to come out to the rally. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be masked up and distanced. But if you're able and if you feel safe, show up. And if you can't show up, speak out. there are so many ways you can speak out, right? You can write to your elected officials. You can demand better. And that's one of the things that we're doing, Mary, as the official opposition. We're calling on this government to actually take tangible action to address racism. We've called on them after consulting with the National Council for Canadian Muslims. We've asked, for there to be a bipartisan committee set up to actually center voices of racialized folks. The premier didn't even condemn the first few attacks on Black Muslim women, and hasn't spoken out against this rise in racism and white supremacy. We need that. Our leaders need to condemn this stuff. They need to call it out, right? And so until they do, it's on all of us to keep speaking out. And like I said, and I'll say it again, white people, you need to step up. You need to support our racialized friends and neighbors. We're seeing a lot of really cool solidarity, right? Karen talked about, working with, there's folks of Asian descent, Indigenous folks, LGBTQ2S plus community members, Black folks, and the list goes on, right? So we're seeing a lot of solidarity happening, and I hope it continues, and I hope it just grows, right? I hope that solidarity grows, so that we're not having to keep have these conversations. But until then, until there's action, we must keep speaking about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think as a communications person and a journalist, I have written a lot about racism and, the stuff that people experience every day of their life, especially, when you are in a workplace and stuff like that, and also in social settings. But more importantly, in the workplace where it's very hard. Somebody is actually putting a comment here, which is exciting. I'm not going to read it, but we'll move forward. So the thing that I have to ask, that probably is a final question of this session that we're doing, is we just hope that, all parties realize that there is a piece for everybody in this. And it's not just about you or me or, if one hurts, the whole community hurts. So that's something that everybody needs to realize. And just make it easy for each Albertan. And how we can do that is not make namesake organizations and things because we are asking for things. Don't make namesake organizations which don't do anything. Just have clarity on what are you going to achieve by making an advisory council, or by doing, what are you going to achieve, and how is the milestones going to show to people, and have that transparency. Like, to me, if I don't see that, then it's just a defunct organization. Like, I don't know why you create those organizations just for namesake and for, the labels. It doesn't work. And that's what we've been seeing for so long. So how do we speak up when government agencies and organizations which we rely on, we trust, to make those pathways for us, don't do their job? Any of you, please go ahead.
So what do we do when those higher institutions fail us, is your question?
Exactly.
I think that's interesting. For our march tomorrow, we will have call to action, and I think over time I've had some different opinions around that, because I feel like we've tried so many things. Mary, you heard me speak last weekend. I feel like we've tried so many things. There has been a long struggle around ensuring our curriculum in the schools reflect the there's the demographic of our communities. We have committees and task forces, and every level of government have these very outright statements. But I feel like what is lacking is happening at the interpersonal and the streets and the neighborhood level, that we are skeptical of our neighbors. We question who they are, whether it's class, socioeconomic class, or race, or gender, or whatever, or religion.
Siba, can you kindly mute yourself?
Okay.
Anyways, so all that to say is what happens when the higher institutions fail us. I think it's up to us on the ground. And I think it's up to us to kind of, I would love to see our neighborhoods create more spaces where natural collisions happen. And I mean collision in terms of interactions that happen between neighbors. That we actually, roll up our sleeves and work on things together to build that bridge, because government's not going to build that bridge for us. Our institutions are not going to do that. And it really comes down to individuals. And I say that, I think it's ironic because I am running for office. And I think there is a piece of that. I'm not saying that's not important, but I also think we all need to do something individually to reach across.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen. Since Siba didn't get any opportunity to really, communicate with us, so I'm going to give this opportunity to Siba. Kindly unmute yourself. And can we just have you say the last word about, any experience you've had with racism? I don't know, there's a lot of echo from your mic.
As an African, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So as African, we face racism every day. The minute I leave my house, I constantly, I'm conscious about see of me, how they see me, what they think of me, So we constantly face racism every day, everywhere, in the supermarkets, walking down the street, anyway, we constantly face racism. But I think as a society, educate ourselves. We advocate for ourselves. We advocate for policies to change systemic racism. It starts with the institutions. If we see something which is not working good, we have to speak out. We have to fight for it. So that's my take on racism. But we, face racism daily. It's like our face, our skin is like, we are judged differently. We're seen differently by colleagues, not only by the Caucasian, but by other races as well. That's the sad part of it, that we don't face racism from white people, but we face racism from other minorities as well.
Yeah,
so that's our
true.
constant struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Siba. And we've reached towards the end of our. It's actually really hard to speak. Can you unmute? Can you mute yourself, Siba?
Yeah. Sorry.
So, if anybody wants to give like a quote or anything or an advice to the general community, this is your time to do that.
Janice, why don't you go? I think you have to hop off, eh? Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I can start. No, I mean, I just want to continue to amplify the voices of folks who are experiencing racism and discrimination. And so, like I said earlier, if you're able to come out in solidarity to the march that Karen's helping to organize tomorrow, the rally, absolutely do it. If you can't, that's okay. I get it. We're in the midst of a pandemic, but there are so many other things that you can be doing. And we all have a responsibility. This is our community. Collectively, there are so many things we can be doing, and I'll repeat what those are. Right? If you can't show up, you can speak out, and there's so many ways you can speak out. You can write to your elected officials at all orders of government. You can continue to demand better from your government and from leaders. And so, yeah, I could go on for a long time, but I know I need to stop talking. But just thanks for this opportunity, and thanks, Mary, for the work you do. Siba, it was good to meet you, and Karen, as always. Thanks for the work that you do as well.
Thanks so much, Janice. I mean, you already very visible by the work you do. So thank you so much for everything you do and for standing up for the people who can't have their own voices heard. And I want to thank Karen for, being such a bold front of an Asian person who's putting herself out and, trying to stand up for all the entire community in Southeast. I'm so grateful for her voice and for her strength and for her courage to do that at this time when there's so much assaults happening on Asian people. And I want to say thank you to Siba, because there are very few Black women I've seen who have the courage to stand up and say that, hey, that's not right. And I'm so grateful that there are people like you, Siba, who can actually stand up and say, hey, I need to educate them. And so thank you for the work you do. And thank you all, because you all go to make our community stronger and better every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
See you all again at another.